There's a guy named Owen who works in logistics, makes $71,000 a year, and has never bought a single share of a hot stock, never touched crypto, and has never once mentioned an investment at a dinner party. Nobody asks him for advice. Nobody thinks he's interesting. And yet, Owen's net worth quietly crossed $600,000 last year, almost entirely from assets most people have never heard of, don't understand, or dismiss as boring before they even look at the numbers. That's the pattern with almost every asset on the list I'm about to show you. They're not exciting. They don't trend on social media. Nobody's making a TikTok about municipal bonds. But the ledger doesn't care what's exciting. It only cares what compounds. And these 20 assets have been quietly compounding for people willing to look past the boring label for decades. By the end of this video, you'll have a list of real, legitimate ways to build wealth that almost nobody talks about, why they work, and the honest catch attached to each category. Let's start with the ones almost everyone already has access to and just never uses properly. Number 1. Dividend Aristocrats. These are companies in the S&P 500 that have raised their dividend every single year for at least 25 consecutive years straight. There are currently around 65 companies that qualify, names like Coca-Cola and Procter & Gamble. These aren't exciting growth stocks. They're businesses that have paid you more money every year through recessions, wars, and pandemics for a quarter century or longer without missing a beat. Number 2. Series 1 Savings Bonds. Issued directly by the U.S. Treasury, these bonds pay a composite interest rate that adjusts with inflation twice a year, meaning your money is structurally protected from losing purchasing power. There's a purchase limit of $10,000 per person per year through Treasury Direct, which keeps this from being a wealth strategy on its own, but as a place to protect cash that needs to keep pace with rising prices, almost nothing beats it. Number 3. Municipal Bonds. When a city or state needs to fund a bridge, a school, or a water system, they issue bonds to investors. The interest you earn is typically exempt from federal income tax, and often from state tax too if you live in the state that issued it. For someone in a high tax bracket, a municipal bond paying 4% can be worth more after taxes than a corporate bond paying 5.5%. Number 4. REITs, Real Estate Investment Trusts. By law, a REIT must distribute at least 90% of its taxable income to shareholders as dividends. That single legal requirement is why REITs have historically paid meaningfully higher yields than regular stocks. You get exposure to shopping centers, apartment buildings, warehouses, even data centers, without ever calling a tenant or fixing a leaking pipe. Number 5. Certificate of Deposit Ladders. Instead of locking all your cash into one CD, you stagger multiple CDs across different maturity dates. 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. As each one matures, you reinvest it at whatever the current rate is, which means you're never fully locked out of rising rates, and you always have cash becoming available on a schedule. None of these 5 assets require you to fix anything, manage anyone, or answer a 2 a.m. phone call. They require you to open an account and stop checking it every day. Number 6. Farmland. According to data from the National Council of Real Estate Investment Fiduciaries, U.S. farmland has produced positive annual returns in the vast majority of years going back to the 1990s, driven by a combination of land appreciation and lease income from the farmers who work it. You don't need to drive a tractor. You need to own the ground underneath one. Number 7. Timberland. Trees, unlike stocks, don't panic during a recession. If timber prices drop, a landowner can simply choose not to harvest that year and let the trees keep growing, literally compounding in the ground. Large institutional endowments have held timberland for exactly this reason. It moves independently of the stock market. Number 8. Cell tower land leases. Wireless carriers don't want to own land. They want to rent a small patch of it to put a tower on. Landowners who sign these leases often see automatic rent escalations built into the contract, commonly in the range of 2 to 3% a year, for terms that can run 25 years or longer. A quarter acre nobody wanted becomes a multi-decade income stream. Number 9. Billboard leases. Same logic, different structure. Outdoor advertising companies pay landowners near highways and busy intersections to lease space for a sign. Once it's built, that income continues for years with essentially zero ongoing effort from the landowner. Number 10, parking lot ownership. In dense cities, land used purely for parking can generate meaningful income with almost no maintenance and no tenants to manage in the traditional sense. It's one of the simplest income-producing real estate categories that exists, precisely because it requires nothing to be built on it at all. In every one of these five, the asset is the ground itself. You're not managing a business on top of the land. You're renting the dirt. Now, here's the warning label nobody puts on this section, because these categories aren't as liquid or as beginner-friendly as they sound. Farmland and timberland typically require either significant capital to buy directly or access through specialized funds that often carry minimum investments well into the thousands of dollars and multi-year lockups. Cell tower and billboard leases usually require you to already own suitable land, which most people simply don't. These aren't assets you buy on an app during your lunch break. They're assets that reward patience, capital, and in some cases, specialized access most retail investors have to work to find.
Number 11, self-storage units. According to industry data, the average person renting a unit stays for well over a year, often forgetting exactly what's inside while the payment keeps processing automatically. As an owner, whether through a direct small facility or a publicly traded self-storage REIT, you're collecting from a customer base with famously high renewal rates and low turnover. Number 12, vending machine ownership. This is different from running a vending business day to day. Some investors simply own the machines and place them under a management agreement with a local operator, collecting a share of the revenue without touching a single bag of chips. Number 13, ATM ownership. A single ATM placed in the right location, a bar, a convenience store, a laundromat, can generate steady per-transaction fee income for years with minimal upkeep beyond periodically restocking cash. Number 14, laundromat equipment leasing. Rather than owning and operating an entire laundromat, some investors specifically lease commercial washer and dryer equipment to laundromat operators in exchange for a fixed monthly payment, functioning almost like a landlord for machines instead of buildings. Number 15, solar land leases. As utility-scale solar farms have expanded across the country, landowners in the right regions have been able to lease acreage to solar developers for terms often running 15 to 25 years, generating income from land that may have previously produced very little. Every asset here trades a small physical footprint for a recurring stream of income that doesn't require you to be the one standing behind the counter. Number 16, music royalties. When Bob Dylan sold his songwriting catalog in 2020, the reported price was around $300 million for the rights to royalties on songs written decades earlier that still generate income every time they're streamed, played on the radio, or licensed for a film. On a much smaller scale, platforms now exist that let regular investors buy fractional shares of royalty streams from working musicians, collecting a slice of income every time those songs get played. Number 17, patent and trademark licensing. Universities, inventors, and small businesses often license their patents to companies that want to manufacture or sell the underlying product, collecting a royalty on every unit sold without manufacturing anything themselves. Number 18, peer-to-peer and private lending notes. Through regulated platforms, individual investors can fund small personal or business loans directly, collecting the interest that would normally go entirely to a bank. Historical average returns on diversified peer lending portfolios have generally landed in the mid-single digits to high single digits annually, though default risk is real and has to be underwritten carefully. Number 19, life settlements. This is a lesser-known secondary market where a policyholder who no longer wants or needs their life insurance policy sells it to a third-party investor for more than its cash surrender value but less than its death benefit. The investor then continues paying the premiums and eventually collects the payout. It's an unusual asset class precisely because its returns are largely uncorrelated with the stock market. It doesn't care what the S&P 500 does. Number 20, the one I want you to actually remember. Whole life insurance cash value. Unlike term insurance, a whole life policy builds cash value over time on a tax-deferred basis, and you can borrow against that cash value without triggering a taxable event, using the policy itself as collateral. It's slow, it's not going to make headlines, but it's one of the few assets that grows steadily regardless of what the market is doing, while still providing a death benefit underneath it the entire time. These 20 are all doing the same basic thing in different disguises. Someone else needs access to something you own: money, land, intellectual property, or risk protection, and they pay you consistently for that access. I'd be lying if I told you all 20 of these are simple or safe. Life settlements and private lending notes carry real default and liquidity risk. Royalty investments depend entirely on whether a song, patent, or catalog keeps generating income, which isn't guaranteed. Farmland and timberland funds often lock up your capital for years at a time. And several of these categories require either specialized platforms, accredited investor status, or meaningful starting capital that a beginner with $500 simply won't have access to on day one. The honest truth is that most people reading a list like this will realistically start with 2 or 3 of these: dividend stocks, REITs, and maybe I bonds or a CD ladder, because those are the ones with the lowest barrier to entry. That's not a failure, that's sequencing. You don't need all 20 on day one. You need to understand that they exist so that as your capital grows, your options grow with it.